Welcome to another episode of Sea Level Up. I'm JD Miller.
And I'm Mike Kreisel.
So if this is your first episode, welcome. Where have you been? We've missed you.
Please listen to us. Please listen to us.
So if this is your first episode, what Sea Level Up is, we sit down with leaders, whether it's in business, CEOs, musicians, entertainers. We want to find out what makes you a leader. How'd you start? Where are you going? And we have a little fun along the way, right, Mike?
We certainly do, JD. And, today we get to talk to Sean Barnes about leadership. And it is really interesting to hear him talk about how he evolved from an introvert IT person to someone that could talk to anyone and talk in front of many people, too.
I think that's great. And Sean is the president of WSS Solutions that builds leaders and businesses, guiding clients through strategic planning, process implementation, innovative solutions to achieve their goals. And whenever I sit with someone like Sean, I also want to know about failure. So we talk about that with Sean is how did you fail and what did you learn? And Mike, I have failed many times. I have a quick story for you. I was asked to be the host and one of the keynote speakers at this big athletic banquet, and we had this Olympian there, and so I'm trying to lead this event as good as I can, and getting ready to introduce this bobsledder from that area, and I'm talking about this story on stage. I'm trying to get animated. About, I was on the side of a mountain as he's going bobsledding. And then I took a step back and I literally fell off the back of the stage. And I'm just there on my butt going, how do I bounce back from that? I'm sure I was red-faced when I got up, but there's a failure, Mike. There's a failure.
I've had my share of failures in work, and certainly back in the day, many auditions where I did not book the part. But one failure in the wine business, I had this account, and it was a prestigious account and a big account with an important chef and wine director. And I didn't deliver something when she wanted me to deliver it. So she ended up firing me. And I didn't want to give up the account. It was a big one. So the next week I just showed up, kind of like George Costanza, and and just pretended like nothing was wrong, like everything's okay, and she completely forgot, and I ended up holding on to the account. But yeah, we all have some bad days. We all have some mess ups here and there.
Sean's going to take us through that and take us through why you need, as a leader, you need coaching. That perpetual coaching to get better. It's kind of like you're not Tom Brady back in the day that just shows up and succeeds. He still has a coach, right? Phelps still had a coach. When he was the most decorated Olympian of all time. You still need that help.
And he also had great advice about LinkedIn because I have a terrible profile. Mine is
You
complete.
do. It's not great, Mike. It's not great.
It's hot garbage is what it is. How's yours, JD? How's your profile?
I'm not going to lie. I'm in the top percentile in my household.
I'm sure you're one of the best in your household. And also I'm still on AOL. Is that bad?
The noise when you start it up is what's an issue with your Commodore 64 that you're using at home.
Oh, thanks. Okay, I'll get on that.
Well, we're going to have a fantastic discussion. I'm excited to sit down with Sean. So when we come back, we're going to have a fantastic conversation and some rapid fire questions for Sean. Welcome back, and I'm excited to have Sean Barnes with us, president of WSS Solutions, host of the podcast, The Way of the Wolf, advisory board member for ADP, Avanta, and more, and spent a decade leading corporate IT, HR, and operations at 9 Energy Service, led IT operations at Form Energy Technologies, and so much more. We've shared the stage several times for fireside discussions, And I always love sitting down with Sean and been on previous podcasts of mine as well. Sean, welcome to the show.
JD, it is an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait for us to dive into this topic. Every single conversation we've always had, there's been tons of energy and excitement. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, this is going to be fun. My first question for you is you formed WSS Solutions, and we've had some wonderful conversations about this. You starting your own venture, and it's going fantastically well for you. Talk to me. What was the origin of WSS Solutions? What made you want to do this?
You know, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit and fire inside of me. And one of the things that I'm open and transparent about is immediately after college, I had two failed attempts at starting companies. One was a computer repair company, and the other was an automotive speed shop because I liked racing cars. I thought coming out of college, I can build a business. And I was so wrong. I had student loans to pay back. I had bills to pay. And so I ended up just getting a job. I actually worked at a bank for a couple of years, just in the IT department, and then found my way into oil and gas, where I was able to kind of satisfy that hunger around entrepreneurship, because the companies that I was working with were highly acquisitive. And so I got the opportunity to go in and help from a mergers and acquisitions and integration perspective to partner very closely with the entrepreneurs of all of these oil and gas companies. I've actually been a part of about 48 acquisitions, integrations, and divestitures over the years. So I had just so many beautiful opportunities to learn and better understand how these businesses start, grow, and scale. And over the years, I got to a point to where I started doing more than just IT. I started leading human resources, and then safety and transportation and ESG and PMO, all corporate functions. And I had pretty much reached a ceiling where I was at before. And I thought, I want to do more. I'm always talking to people about how important it is to push out of your comfort zone. And there are very few things in life that will challenge you more than starting a business. So here I am with the ultimate goal of positively impacting as many lives as possible through strong leadership. And we deliver that through the podcast, and then more specific and targeted support for our customers through WSS Solutions.
Sean, I saw you said something really interesting about being an introvert at a point in time in your life or in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people get social FOMO, fear of missing out. I love missing out on stuff. I love it. I'm a complete introvert.
Mm-hmm.
JD is an extrovert. But being an introvert doesn't mean that I can't talk to people, or I can't run a meeting or be a leader when it's needed. But to be honest, it's real work for me to get there, and it is exhausting sometimes afterwards. So I guess I'm curious, how did you evolve from being introverted to honing your skills and getting to that point where you're using extroverted skills in leadership and in business?
It was admittedly a long and arduous journey where my calling and mission was greater than my fear of interacting with all of these other people. And you made a comment of at one point in time, I'm going to actually rebut that and say for the almost entirety of my life, I was the hardcore introvert that if I didn't know you, I was not talking to you. And it was in my mid 30s whenever I had this epiphany that I just knew that my calling was greater and that I wanted to have a bigger impact on the world. And I also knew how challenging that would be to do behind a keyboard. And I started to understand the value of human connection. And in order to make those connections, you have to be comfortable making eye contact with people. You have to be comfortable in understanding what is active listening. How do you pay attention and listen to understand? And then piece all of these things together so that you can move the team or the business forward. And to your point of it being exhausting, the very first time that I had to stretch out of my comfort zone way more than usual, we had acquired a company. This was back in 2018-19 timeframe. And I was chosen to lead the integration efforts for all functional domains. So not just ITHR and the corporate side of things, but also supply chain, engineering, all aspects of it. And one of the first things we did is we pulled the entire integration team, all parties involved. There's about 48 or 9 of us, and we ran a 2-day workshop. I had people on my team that were kind of taking notes and navigating through the slides and everything like that. But I had to be in front of all of these people for a day and a half straight. And we did phenomenal. We got everything that we needed out of it. And then I went back to the house that afternoon. It was like 3:00 in the afternoon by the time we wound down everything. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to lay down and take a nap. I didn't wake up till 8:30 the next morning. It was just crazy how exhausted I was. But this is like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you get at it. And over the last 3 weeks, I've actually had 3 public speaking engagements on back-to-back weeks, and I actually did okay. The exhaustion came from having to catch up on work on nights and weekends. But if you train this like a muscle and are intentional about what your mission and purpose is, and know I'm going to have to do these things, I'm going to have to be uncomfortable for a while, but I'm going to start to build more and more muscles around doing this thing. That has been the key for me. And it has been that internal fire, mission, and purpose that has pushed me through all of it over the years.
It's easy to talk about successes, right? It's easy to talk about the Chiefs. It's hard to talk about the Bears, those failures. I throw this out because Mike's a bit of a Bear fan. But through these failures of starting your business and listen, that's leadership, right? And learning how to be a leader. What did you learn through those early failures?
Well, so are you referring to the failed businesses right after college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, admittedly, I kind of blocked that out of my memory for a little while. There was some shame and embarrassment of not being able to do it. And it's only been in recent years that I've reflected back. Whenever I started more seriously considering creating WSS and doing this full time and leaving that high paying corporate job to go pay myself nothing for the first few years to build this thing. And I started reflecting back, and there are a number of things that are important to ensure your success if you are starting and launching a business. The miss for my computer repair company was I had 0 brand advertising, marketing, nothing. I was great at the technology and fixing computers and working on networks. I had no clue how to do anything related to client acquisition. So sales and marketing and lead generation, I knew nothing about it, which is why that business failed. Now, the automotive speed shop, because I was so passionate about it and out and about in the racing scene and car shows and had nailed down the branding on that. It was called Bad Habit Motorsports, and it was freaking awesome. But I struggled with getting cash flow and getting customers. And I probably shut it down too soon, if I'm being honest. But it was kind of one of those things like, oh, bills are creeping up. I've got to be able to start doing this and getting some cash. And so I ended up kind of shutting down my dream at the time and just going and getting that full-time job. And so the lessons here are, if you are contemplating or thinking through building your business or starting a business, it is not enough for you to be the best in the world at this thing. You also have to understand more aspects of the business. There's all things related to client acquisition. There's the non-sexy stuff, which is the back office administration, invoicing, setting up your own systems, managing your people. And then there is service or product delivery. So those are kind of the three pillars of business. And you need to know all of those things. And then the other piece is make sure that you save your money, because it doesn't matter how big your network is. If you go out with this mindset of, I've got this big network, I'm going to go out on my own, hang a sign up, and then it's just going to start raining customers. It doesn't happen that way. So make sure that you are financially set and comfortable in knowing that, yes, I'm stepping away from a high paying job. I'm going to have to take multiple steps backwards in terms of my quality of living and income, so that in the future, I can take 15 steps forward and be doing what I love.
That's hard. That is difficult. And I know we're going to take a break here soon, but before we do, so you started WSS Solutions, and please tell us, what does WSS Solutions do as you're driving business leaders for the future?
Yeah, so it stands for Wolf Strategic Systems and Solutions, and we have two primary verticals that we operate in. One is going to be all things with leadership development and executive coaching, and then the other is management consulting. And in the management consulting bucket, we really do a lot of HR, IT strategy, and then some operational excellence, which is business process mapping to help businesses grow and scale. And what we're seeing is these two service offerings are very complementary of one another. If we come in and start doing a disaster recovery plan or business continuity plan on the consulting side of things, we get to work closely enough with the leadership team to see, are there opportunities for some leadership development? And so we're starting to see pull through across both of these verticals. And because we're small enough, it's the same people that are supporting you in both areas. And we're just very passionate about doing those things. So in my market research, there's not a whole lot of organizations that offer both, unless they are massive, massive organizations. And you get a leadership guy over here, and then you get a management consultant over here, and they don't really share knowledge or information. So those are the big things that we really focus on, and it seems to work well with our customers.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to dive into that and oh so much more after this break.
It's a thought, a memory, something from the past while taking a bite out of the future. An inner belief that it's okay to be strong, twisted, and salty. It is nothing. It is everything. It is Von Trapp family pretzels.
Right, we're back here with Sean Barnes. Sean, are you ready for something a little different?
I am ready.
Right. I would like to do a little session with you, rapid fire questions about Houston for Sean Barnes. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. How long have you lived there, by the way?
Pretty much my entire life. I grew up in a little town called Willis, which is about an hour and a half north of Houston, and I've lived here in the Woodlands for the past 15 years-ish.
Well, then this should be simple. This should be easy for you.
All
All
right.
right, here we go. What is Houston's nickname?
I am not good at this. Oh, man. I don't know. Something related to the Astros or the Texans? I don't know.
We would have accepted Bayou City, Space City, Hustletown, City with no limits.
So
and
Space City. That's what I was
Space.
thinking of. I was thinking of Space City. Yeah.
All right.
All right, here we go. Out of these two Houstonians, which one is more popular? Joel Osteen or Beyonce?
Mattress Mac.
This-
I think Joel Osteen, I guess, would probably be, but Mattress Mac is the first one that comes to mind.
All right. The space station has a phone, and it's a Houston area code. What is that area code?
Either 281 or 713.
You got it, 281. What is the first word and or sentence that was ever said from the moon? By Neil Armstrong.
Oh, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I think that came after he said, Houston, tranquility base here. The eagle has landed.
Oh, fair. Yep.
Okay, so
you're right.
speaking of the moon and getting back to football, who was a better QB, Warren Moon in his prime or CJ Stroud?
Oh, man. So I am not a sports person, so I'm going to go with Warren Moon. I don't even know who CJ is.
Former Viking Warren Moon, Mike.
That's true. That's true. He was very good as a Viking. I had his starting lineup figured. I might still have it. Better performer, Angelica Houston or Whitney Houston or Allen Houston?
Whitney Houston. I'm guessing I don't know who the other two are.
Okay, if I, Mike Kreisel, am in Houston for one night, where am I going to go for dinner? What am I doing? Am I doing brisket? Am I doing Tex-Mex? Something else? What do you think? And where?
There's some really nice steakhouses. I can't think of the names of them. I am so sorry, guys. I am completely butchering all of these questions.
I love this. That's you've been Kreisel.
This is not my thing. You talk
it.
about leadership and business, I am all in. But like this type of stuff, I'm struggling. I'm gonna do my best though.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, so there are 198 golf courses in the Houston 50-mile downtown radius. How many have you played at?
Top Golf. I know that's not a golf course, but that's the only place I've been.
That answer is correct.
Okay.
Okay, this child of Houston built Houston's first wireless transmitter at age 11. At age 12, he was photographed by the newspaper because he built a motorized bicycle from parts of a broken steam engine. Later in life, he would become a famous movie producer, dating people like Jean Harlow, Katharine Hepburn, Ava Gardner, and he also dabbled in planes a little bit, building something called the Spruce Goose. Who is this Houstonian?
Oh, so I didn't know until the very end. Howard Hughes?
Correct. All right, and finally, Ancestry.com found out last year that Ted Cruz is a second cousin to Tom Cruise. Is that true or false?
I have no clue. False?
Correct.
Okay.
And that concludes the rapid fire 10 questions about Houston for Sean Barnes.
Okay. All right. I feel like I failed miserably on all of that. I can't call myself a Houstonian after that showing.
But as we learned earlier, Sean, failing's how we learn, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. That was fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about leadership with WSS Solutions and what does coaching look like today? And how has coaching evolved? Because I know, and you and I have talked, and you've sent me some content and some pictures where these people are engaged. They're sitting there, and also that's got to be tough because leaders think they know everything already. So how do you coach a leader?
Oh, man, there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'm going to do my best to kind of pull all of this stuff together. I think the coaching landscape over the past 5 to 10 years has been increasingly difficult to navigate because the barrier to entry is pretty much non-existent. And what we're seeing is there's a lot of people that have no leadership experience, but maybe they have a PhD in psychology and they hang out a website saying, hey, I'm an executive coach. And because the website looks pretty and they see the fancy letters behind their name, they think, oh, I'm going to start working with this person. And there's a difference between going through and getting those advanced degrees and actually being able to apply that knowledge in leading a team or massive teams with layers in between you and the bottom rung. And so with that barrier to entry being so low, I think a lot of organizations and leaders are struggling with, who do I actually trust? How can I know if this person actually knows how to lead? And then beyond that, how to develop more leaders? So the space itself is very challenging to navigate. And I think that if you are looking for some sort of executive coach or guidance in this space, to go out and start looking at their online presence, seeing the content that they put out. And if they have a fancy website, but they're not engaging with anybody, they're not sharing lessons, they're not speaking at conferences, leaning into thought leadership, it should be an indication of maybe not. I just need to tread lightly here. And so when you start looking for a coach, just make sure that they have a stack of undeniable results that they have been able to achieve with their clients over the years. So that's one thing. The second question you had is, how do you coach a leader? There are a lot of people that find themselves in leadership positions because they were the best at that thing that they do. They were the best individual contributor. And I'm going to pick on IT guys for a little bit because I am one. You can be the best developer and find yourself in a CIO or CTO role. That does not mean you are equipped to lead a team of developers. Because as you ascend in your career, you have to learn different skills to be successful at each one of those levels. When you start dealing with somebody who is the best in the room or the best in the world at what they do, that usually comes along with some sort of ego. Ego can be a destructive force for the person, for their team, for the entire organization. And look, whenever it comes to coaching people, there are some people that approach me, and if their ego is too massive, I usually won't work with them, because what I don't want is just to take their money and them ignore everything that I say to try to coach them and guide them in a certain direction. And when they don't achieve the results from not doing the work, I don't want them to say, oh, well, WSS and Sean, they're not doing their thing. So whenever it comes to coaching a leader, you can only coach them, you can only guide them and lead them if they want and are willing to be led. Now, I will also add to that, I have encountered people that have massive egos that their head is so big you don't even know how they can get it through the door. But when you come in and sit down with them or have group sessions with them, if you are able to impress them with your command of knowledge in a given domain, usually that checks that ego wall and brings it down enough for them to respect you enough to listen to you so that you can start to affect change. So those are a few things that I've figured out over the past few years of coaching executives. And it would seem that more C-level executives struggle with ego than managers and directors and even VPs. But it's like once they get to a certain level, more of them, or a higher percentage of the population, tends to have a bit more of an ego. Now, that's not an absolute, but that's kind of a trend that I do notice. So I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully that helps.
I feel like you're looking at me, Mike, when he was talking about the massive ego walking into a room. I felt it, Mike.
It's just like really gross. Your ego is just so huge, JD. It's just, I love that talk about ego and leadership and how complicated it can be, because it also seems like there are reasons to have an ego, that it can be used for good sometimes and sometimes not so much. I have a question unrelated to that, though. You once said, Sean, that you shouldn't have a LinkedIn profile that looks like a high school kid put it together. And I want you to know that that's exactly what I have.
Oh,
it's terrible. It is terrible. If you were to look at my profile, you would think that I'm 10 and probably a little bit slow. I only have 2 connections, and yes, they're my parents. Where should I start to build a good profile? And is MySpace not cool anymore?
It is not cool anymore.
Oh, okay.
And I think your head is in the right place and acknowledging that maybe there's some opportunities to do things a little bit better. So I think that's where you start. But navigating through LinkedIn is, I think, how do I put this? I've actually had a number of people reach out to me, and I've considered just doing kind of like a mini coaching sprint on LinkedIn and just calling it Lost in LinkedIn. But I think for those of us that are used to networking in person or just not being the social butterfly and having our head down and doing our job, when you start talking about doing things publicly on LinkedIn, there's this kind of a, oh, I don't want to do that. But there are minor, easy things that you can do to your profile to at least make it visually appealing. I'm not saying you have to go out and create content every single day or comment or share or leave articles. Those things are great and they drive more traffic to your profile because they are raising awareness of who you are and what you do. And that builds a stronger brand and reputation for yourself. However, the first step is making sure that you have a good LinkedIn profile photo. See a lot of guys, especially in oil and gas, that it's kind of a photo that's kind of blurry from them in the distance. They've got their sunglasses on and their hat on backwards. It looks like they're either fishing or hunting. That's great for MySpace. Leave it over there. On LinkedIn, it is a professional business networking platform. So make sure that you have a decent headshot and pay to get some headshots. I know the thought of spending a couple $100 for some headshots seems like a waste, but at least try to put your best foot forward. So get a decent headshot. There's a lot of AI tools that will take photos of you and cobble together like an AI version. I'm not too keen on those, but some of them are okay. Decent headshot, decent banner image, and then have some sort of a heading talking about who you are, what you do, and then a decent about section. Those are the first things to focus on. And then next, I would look at your career history and make sure that when you put your specific roles and companies that you worked for, that you were tying it or attaching each of those companies to the LinkedIn company page for that company. Instead of just saying, okay, well, I'm at WSS, but I didn't link it to the company page, then it just shows up as this default image, and it looks just kind of cobbled together and half-assed, if that makes sense. Those are the big ticket items that I say just at least have that foundational stuff. You don't have to go out and create content. You don't have to network with people all the time on there. But when the day comes for people to look you up, what you don't want is to have the profile of a high school kid with 3 connections, because then immediately it starts to create doubt in the person. Is this the right person? Like, this is the person I'm thinking about having to come speak at my conference, and they have no followers and no, like, this can't be right. So it kind of breaks people's brains a little bit. And then if we look at this through the lens of an employee trying to find a new job, recruiters, hiring managers, the first place they're going to go is to your LinkedIn presence. Everything that we do contributes to our personal brand, whether we're being intentional about it or not. So why not be a little intentional about it and spend half an hour putting a profile together?
A question for you. How do I know I need leadership help? Acknowledgement of, needing to reach out to organizations like WSS. How do I know I need it?
The first thing that comes to mind is, what are your stress levels like? How are your days? Are you scrambling and struggling, and it just seems like you can never get your head above water, constantly fighting fires in your team, in your business? If you are in that state eternally, it is highly likely that something needs to change. And if you look around and there's fires everywhere around you, you have to ask yourself the question, am I contributing to some of these fires? Am I starting some of these fires because of my lack of awareness of how to tackle this problem? And one of the things that I've come to realize is change is painful. And the only way we can actually start to change is if the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Only then will we start to understand, you know what, changing, getting a coach, learning, evolving, growing, that's going to suck, but it's going to suck less than actually staying here in this miserable downward spiral that I'm in today.
Fantastic. Sean, this has been wonderful, and I appreciate you taking, all this time to take us through this. And we've just scratched the surface. We're going to have a whole series on this because there's a lot here. How can people get your help and get your advice today?
I think you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Sean Barnes. You can actually go to seanbarnes.com. That redirects to our WSS Solutions website. And we are in the middle of building out a new website focused just on public speaking. And so there's kind of a pull through in our online presence between WSS, The Way of the Wolf, and Sean Barnes. So if you Google any of those things or search any of those key phrases, you'll come across our YouTube, you'll come across our podcast, or find me on LinkedIn.
Sean, thank you so much. What a great discussion. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks so much, Sean. Appreciate it.
As we said off the top, Mike, Sean brings a wealth of information and great coaching on how to become that leader, how to learn from your failures, but also how to motivate in today's climate brings a lot to the table.
And we also talked about ego in leadership, how it can be problematic, how it can be helpful, and how to overcome those sort of people and have real conversations about, hey, you got to look in the mirror. You got to figure this out if you want to be successful, if you want your company to be successful, if you want to have sustainable relationships with your employees, these fires need to be put out in a very thoughtful way.
He always has that calmness that you need as a leader in the storm. You're giving him rapid fire questions. He still had the calm, even though it's like, I'm not into sports, but I know how to deal with leaders in the boardroom and coach people failing up. So, having that calm is something that's important.
He had the right answer, though, for the fact that Ted Cruz is not related to Tom Cruise. So he was right about that, and that's a positive thing. But man, hey, let's all go down and visit Sean in Houston and go get some good food, and maybe we'll run into Beyonce.
There we go. Wonderful. Mike, thank you so much. And again, thank you to Sean for joining us here today on this episode of Sea Level Up. Sea Level Up is a production of James Dwayne Group, producers JD Miller and Mike Kreisel, edited by Nala B and Penny M. All depictions of persons living or dead are purely on purpose. All episodes will be on jamesdwayne.com. That's James Dwayne, DWAYNE.com, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us as we start this Sea Level Up adventure.